My son asked me to sign one last document, saying it was just a formality. I read it carefully and signed anyway. 3 days later, he realized he'd given me control over everything he thought he owned. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first time I knew something had shifted was at dinner. Not a family dinner. Those had stopped years ago. This was what my son Derek called a business review meeting, held in a restaurant he chose because it had the right lighting for the kind of people he wanted to impress. The kind of place where the menus don't have prices and the waiters refold your napkin when you go to the bathroom. I ordered the cheapest thing I could find without looking cheap. Old habit. Derek sat across from me in a suit that cost more than my first car. His wife Amanda sat beside him, scrolling through her phone with the kind of casual disrespect that had become her signature move. She was good at making you feel like furniture, present, functional, ignorable. "Dad," Derek said, not looking up from his tablet, "we need to talk about the transition." I'd been hearing about the transition for 6 months. It had started as a conversation about retirement, then evolved into something more aggressive. My role at the company, the facilities and operations oversight I'd been doing for 23 years, was being restructured. That's what they called it when they wanted you gone, but couldn't quite fire you. "I'm listening," I said. Amanda looked up just long enough to smirk. "Are you, though?" I took a sip of water. Didn't respond. That was another thing I'd learned over the years. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people make mistakes. Derek shot her a look, then turned back to me. "The restructuring is complete. The board approved the new operational framework. We're consolidating oversight under a single director position. And that director would be you. It makes sense. Fresh perspective, new energy." He said it like he'd rehearsed it. Probably had. "Sure." He blinked. He'd been expecting an argument. When you expect an argument and don't get one, you don't know where to put your momentum. "The thing is," he continued, slower now, "we need to formalize the handoff. Documentation, legal stuff, you know how it is." I knew exactly how it was. I'd spent 2 decades making sure every system, every contract, every access point was properly documented. Derek had learned at my knee, back when he still thought I had something to teach him, before business school convinced him that experience was just another word for obsolete. "What kind of documentation?" Amanda's phone hit the table. "Jesus, can we skip the interrogation? Sign the papers, take the severance, and let us move forward. Some of us have actual work to do." I looked at her, really looked at her. She was 31, pretty in that high-maintenance way that requires a budget and a team. She'd married Derek 3 years ago, right after he'd been promoted to senior management. Funny how that timing worked out. "I wasn't talking to you," I said. Her face flushed. Derek's jaw tightened. "Dad, I was asking your husband a question about my job, which I still have, last time I checked." The waiter appeared, setting down plates no one had been paying attention to. The interruption gave everyone a chance to reset. When he left, Derek tried a different approach. "Look, I know this is hard. Change is always hard. But this is what's best for the company. You've given a lot of years, time to enjoy what you've built." What I'd built, that was rich. I'd kept the physical infrastructure running while everyone else played with PowerPoints and revenue projections. I knew every building we owned, every lease we held, every vendor contract and maintenance schedule. I knew which loading docks had camera blind spots and which security guards actually read their instructions. I knew where the spare keys were kept and who had forgotten to update their passwords in the system. I knew things. Derek didn't know what I knew. That was going to be important later. "When do you need the signature?" I asked. He relaxed slightly. "End of week. I'll have legal draw up the final documents. It's really straightforward, just a transfer of operational authority, acknowledgement of the restructuring, standard stuff." "Fine." Amanda's eyebrows went up. "Fine? That's it?" "That's it." Derek looked almost disappointed, like he'd been preparing for a fight and I'd just robbed him of his big moment. He reached for his wine glass, took a drink that was supposed to look casual but came off nervous. "Great, I'll email you the details." We finished the meal in silence. Not comfortable silence, the kind that sits heavy in your chest and makes the food taste like cardboard. Amanda checked her phone 17 times. I counted. When the bill came, Derek grabbed it with a flourish that was supposed to demonstrate generosity. I let him. Why not? He was paying with a company card tied to an expense account I'd set up 8 years ago. The account that technically still required my secondary approval for anything over $5,000. He hadn't checked the fine print in a while. We stood to leave. Amanda was already walking toward the exit, heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. Derek paused, put a hand on my shoulder. I know this isn't easy, he said, but it's the right move. You'll see. I nodded. Didn't say what I was thinking, which was that he'd given me the same shoulder pat reassurance when he was 12 and explaining why he'd borrowed my truck without asking. Same tone. Same confidence that he'd figured out an angle I couldn't see. He hadn't figured anything out then, either. I walked to my car, a 6-year-old sedan that started every time and didn't make statements, and sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes. The parking garage was cold, the kind of industrial cold that seeps through your jacket and settles in your bones. I should know. I'd ordered the last replacement batch. My phone buzzed. Text from my wife, Evelyn. How bad? About what we expected. Coming home? Yes. I started the car and pulled out of the garage, past the valet stand where Derek's leased Mercedes was probably getting polished by someone making minimum wage plus tips. The city slid past my windows, offices and apartment buildings and the infrastructure that kept them running, electrical substations, water mains, the bones underneath the skin. Most people never think about the bones. They just assume everything works because it always has. They don't know about the maintenance schedules and the backup systems and the 1,000 small decisions that keep the lights on and the toilets flushing. They don't know what happens when someone who understands the bones decides to apply a little pressure. Evelyn was waiting when I got home. She'd made coffee, the real stuff, not the pod nonsense. She handed me a cup and sat down at the kitchen table without asking how it went. She already knew. He wants you to sign, she said. End of week? You going to? I took a sip. The coffee was perfect. She'd been making my coffee for 28 years. She knew exactly how I took it, same way she knew exactly what I was thinking most of the time. Probably. Her eyebrow went up. Just one. Probably? I want to see the document first. You think there's something there? I think Derek is smart enough to be dangerous and inexperienced enough to be sloppy. She smiled. Not a happy smile, the kind you make when you see someone walking into a trap of their own making. He gets that from his father. The smart part or the sloppy part? Both. We drank our coffee in silence. Outside, the neighborhood was settling into evening. Someone was mowing a lawn 2 houses down, the sound drifting through the window screens. Normal life. Regular life. The kind of life that continues whether you're paying attention or not. I'd spent 23 years paying attention. Derek sent the document 3 days later. Tuesday morning, 9:47 a.m. The email subject line read, Final documentation. Please review and return. Professional. Distant. Like I was a vendor, not his father. I opened the PDF and started reading. Most people don't actually read legal documents. They skim the first page, scroll to the signature line, maybe glance at the boilerplate. It's boring, dense, written in a language designed to make your eyes glaze over. I read every word. Page 1, standard operational transfer language. Nothing surprising. My role, Derek's role. Effective dates. Clean. Page 2, acknowledgement of restructuring. Again, expected. The company reserves the right to modify positions, responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. Page 3, authority transfer. I read that section twice, then 3 times. Then I got up, poured another cup of coffee, and read it again. The language was tricky. Not illegal tricky, just clever. It transferred operational decision-making authority to Derek, effective immediately upon signing. It acknowledged that I would retain advisory capacity and institutional knowledge access during the transition period. But buried in subsection 3.4, using language that sounded like standard boilerplate about system access and documentation handoff, was something else entirely. A trigger clause. The kind of clause that looks like it's protecting the company but is actually protecting whoever understands it. It stipulated that during the transition period, defined as no fewer than 90 days from the date of execution, any operational changes required documented consultation with and non-objection from the transferring party. Documented consultation, non-objection, not approval, not permission, just consultation and non-objection, which meant Derek couldn't make major operational changes without running them past me first. And if I objected, not refused, just objected in writing, the change would require board review. The board that met quarterly, the board that Derek had just convinced to approve his new structure, the board that really didn't like being bothered with operational minutia. I kept reading. Subsection 3.7 was even better. It outlined the scope of operational changes subject to consultation. The language was broad, deliberately broad, vendor contracts over $10,000, building access modifications, any changes to established protocols or documented procedures. I had documented everything, every protocol, every procedure, every vendor relationship and maintenance schedule and access point. 23 years of documentation, all properly filed, all officially part of the company's operational framework, all requiring Derek to consult with me before making changes. I sat back in my chair and looked at the document like it was a bomb someone had handed me with the pin already pulled. Derek hadn't written this. Legal had. Some junior attorney who'd been given a template and told to fill in the blanks. They'd used standard transfer language, probably copied from a dozen other similar agreements. They'd covered the company's ass, made sure there was a consultation period, protected against a wrongful termination lawsuit. They'd built a beautiful trap. And Derek was about to walk into it because he'd see transfer of authority and think he'd won. He wouldn't read the subsections, wouldn't check the definitions, wouldn't realize that advisory capacity plus documented consultation requirement equaled a very specific kind of veto power. I should tell him. That's what a good father would do. Point out the language, suggest a revision, help him avoid the mistake. I thought about Amanda's smirk. The way Derek hadn't made eye contact during dinner. The casual assumption that I'd just sign whatever they put in front of me and shuffle off into irrelevance. I opened my laptop and drafted a reply. Reviewed the document. Looks good. I'll have the signed copy back to you tomorrow. I didn't mention the subsections, didn't ask for clarification, didn't suggest any changes, just agreed. Because Derek was right about one thing. This was about what was best for the company, and the company ran better when people who actually understood how things worked had a say in the decisions. I printed the document, signed it in blue ink, scanned it back in, sent it at 4:53 p.m. Derek replied in 6 minutes. Thanks, Dad. Appreciate your professionalism through this transition. Professionalism. That's what he called it. I called Evelyn. It's done, I said. You signed? I signed. A pause. Then, what did you find? A formality, I said. Just like he promised? She knew me too well to believe that, but she also knew when to wait for the rest of the story. Come home, she said. I'll open the good wine. I shut down my computer and locked my office. The building was quiet. Most people had left by 5, just security and the cleaning crew and people like me who'd forgotten what it felt like to have regular hours. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. Habit. You see more from the stairwells, the maintenance access panels, the security cameras, the spots where people thought they had privacy. On the 3rd floor landing, I paused, looked at the access panel that led to the main server room, still locked with the same combination I'd set 4 years ago. Derek didn't know the combination. Why would he? That was infrastructure stuff. Boring stuff. The stuff that mattered. I got home around 7. Evelyn had the wine breathing and dinner in the oven. Something with chicken and garlic that made the whole house smell like comfort. Tell me, she said. So I did. Showed her the document on my laptop, walked her through the subsections, explained what Derek thought he'd gotten versus what he'd actually signed. She read it twice. Then looked at me with an expression I'd seen before, the same one she'd had when Derek was 16 and had tried to convince us he'd been at the library when we both knew he'd been at Jessica Morrison's house because I'd driven past and seen his car in the driveway. He's going to figure it out, she said. Eventually. And then? And then he'll try to fix it. Probably claim it was a mistake. Ask me to sign a revised version. Will you? I swirled the wine in my glass. It was a nice Cabernet, something we saved for occasions. Not celebrations, exactly. More like markers. Points where you acknowledge that something has shifted and can't shift back. I don't know yet, I said. Depends on what he does with his new authority. You think he'll screw up? I think he's been promoted past his competence level and surrounded himself with people who tell him what he wants to hear. Like Amanda. I nodded. Amanda was a whole separate problem. She'd inserted herself into company functions, offering strategic insights that were really just repackaged business school platitudes. Derek listened to her because she was pretty and confident and said things that made him feel visionary. He didn't notice that her insights were always about things she could see. Marketing, branding, office aesthetics. She never talked about the infrastructure, the systems, the foundations, because she didn't understand them. Neither did Derek anymore, if he ever had. We ate dinner and talked about other things. Evelyn's work at the nonprofit, the Hendersons next door getting divorced, whether we should replace the deck this summer or wait another year. Normal conversation, normal life. Except we both knew it wasn't normal anymore. Something had started. A clock had begun ticking. Derek had 3 days before the document became active, and 90 days after that before the consultation requirement expired. 3 days until he realized what he'd signed. 90 days to watch him try to navigate a system he didn't understand. I went to bed early and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I got to the office at my usual time, 6:30 a.m. The security guard, Marcus, was still on duty. He'd been working nights for 11 years. I'd approved his pay raise last year when his supervisor thought he didn't deserve it. "Morning, Mr. Blake," he said. "Morning. Quiet night?" "Always is." "Your son was here late, though. Left around midnight." "Doing what?" Marcus shrugged. "Didn't ask. He used his keycard to access the 4th floor, server room area." I kept my expression neutral. "Thanks for letting me know." The 4th floor, where the main operational servers were, where all the access logs and control systems ran. Derek was already poking around. I took the elevator up to my office and logged into the system. Pulled up the access logs from last night. Sure enough, Derek's keycard, 11:43 p.m., 4th floor entrance. He'd stayed for 18 minutes. I checked what he'd accessed. HR files, mostly. Personnel records. The organizational charts I'd maintained. He was looking at the structure, trying to understand the scope of what he'd taken over. Amateur hour. If he'd been smart, he would have checked the vendor contracts first. The maintenance schedules, the operational protocols, those were the arteries. The personnel files were just the surface. But Derek had always been a people person. He thought operations was about managing people, not systems. He'd learn. I spent the morning going through my usual routine, checked the maintenance reports from the weekend, reviewed the security updates, sent approval for a plumbing repair that would cost $1,200, well under the consultation threshold. At 10:15, Derek sent a company-wide email. Effective immediately, I'm pleased to announce my new role as Director of Operations. I'm grateful for the foundation laid by our previous leadership and excited to bring fresh energy and innovation to our infrastructure management. Looking forward to collaborating with all departments as we enter this new chapter. Fresh energy, innovation, new chapter, the kind of language that means nothing and sounds like everything. 3 people replied with congratulations. 7 people ignored it. The facilities team, the people I'd worked with for 2 decades, sent me individual messages instead. "What's the real story? Are you okay? Do we report to him now?" I replied to each one the same way. "Transition in progress. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll keep you updated." Because that was the truth. They should keep doing what they were doing. The systems ran because people knew their jobs and did them well. Derek didn't need to touch that, unless he tried to fix what wasn't broken. That's when things would get interesting. At 2:30 p.m., Derek knocked on my office door. Didn't wait for an answer, just opened it and walked in. The new director, exercising his authority. "Hey, Dad, got a minute?" "Sure." He sat down across from my desk, smiled. The same smile he'd used in high school when he needed something but wanted to pretend he didn't. "I wanted to thank you again for making this transition smooth. I know it's not easy. It's fine. The thing is, I've been reviewing some of the operational systems, and I think there's room for improvement, efficiency gains, cost reductions." There it was. "What kind of improvements?" I asked. "Well, for starters, I think we're overpaying on some of the vendor contracts. I looked at the janitorial service. We're paying $23,000 a month. I got a quote from another company for $17,000. The janitorial service. Of course, that was visible, easy to understand, a number he could point to and say he'd saved money. "Did you review the scope of work?" I asked. "The cleaning? Yeah. Same services, lower cost." "What about the security clearances?" He blinked. "What?" "The current janitorial company has security clearances for the server rooms. Background checks on every employee, that's built into the contract. The cheaper company?" "I didn't check that." "They don't. You'd need to get separate security for those areas, which would cost about $8,000 a month. Net savings, -$2,000. His smile faltered. "Okay, that's the kind of institutional knowledge I need from you during the transition." "Happy to help." "What about the HVAC maintenance? That seems high too." We went through it. Every suggestion he had, I walked him through the reality, the backup systems, the compliance requirements, the reasons things cost what they cost. He left my office 40 minutes later looking less enthusiastic about innovation. 3 days passed. Derek didn't realize what he'd signed. He was too busy trying to make his mark, sending emails about operational reviews and efficiency initiatives. Amanda started showing up to department meetings, offering opinions on things she didn't understand. The staff started getting nervous. Change makes people nervous, especially when the change is coming from someone who doesn't know what they're changing. On Thursday evening, Evelyn asked me what I was going to do. Nothing, I said. Nothing? I'm going to let him try to run things, see what happens. And if he breaks something? Then he'll need to fix it, and he'll need my non-objection to do that. She looked at me for a long moment. You're really going to do this? It wasn't a question. He wanted control, I said. Let's see what he does with it. 3 days after signing, Derek tried to implement his first major change. As the story unfolds, hit the hype button, like, subscribe, and write in the comments. Would you forgive them or walk away? The email came on Monday morning at 8:03 a.m. Subject line: Operational Restructuring, Vendor Consolidation Initiative. I read it with my coffee getting cold. Derek had decided to consolidate 17 different vendor contracts into 3 strategic partnerships. Janitorial, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, everything would go through 3 preferred providers who'd bid for the entire package. On paper, it looked smart. Economics of scale, reduced administrative overhead, 1 point of contact instead of 17. In reality, it was a disaster waiting to happen. I forwarded the email to Evelyn with a 1-word message. Started, she replied. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. The email included a request for my input on the RFP process, professional courtesy, making sure I felt included in my advisory capacity. I called Derek's office. His assistant, new, hired last month, didn't know who I was, put me through after a brief hold. Dad, did you see the email? I did. We should talk about it. Great. I've got 15 minutes before my next meeting. 15 minutes. To discuss a complete overhaul of the vendor structure I'd spent 2 decades building. This needs more than 15 minutes, I said. A pause. I could hear the irritation in his breathing. Okay, how about lunch? Noon? I'll be there. He picked the same restaurant. Of course he did. It was becoming his office, the place where he made decisions and felt important. I arrived at 11:58. Derek was already there, tablet out, working on something that made him frown at the screen. Amanda sat beside him, dressed like she was meeting clients instead of having lunch with her father-in-law. Right on time, Derek said. Didn't look up. I sat down, ordered water, waited. Finally, Derek set the tablet aside. So, the consolidation. What do you think? I think it's a mistake. His jaw tightened. Why? 17 vendors means redundancy. 1 fails, you have backups. 3 vendors means dependency. 1 fails, you have a crisis. These would be major companies, national firms. They won't fail. Everyone fails eventually. Question is whether you have options when they do. Amanda leaned forward. You're being paranoid. This is basic procurement strategy. Consolidate purchasing power, negotiate better rates, reduce administrative waste. It's business 101. I looked at her. Have you ever managed a building? I've managed plenty of projects. Have you ever been responsible for keeping the lights on, the water running, the HVAC working when it's 95 degrees and you have 300 people working in an office? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. You're talking about strategy. I'm talking about reality. Derek held up a hand. Okay, let's stay constructive here. Dad, I hear your concerns, but I've done the analysis. We can save almost 40% on annual vendor costs. That's significant. What's the analysis based on? Current contract values versus the bid proposals. Did you factor in response times? What? Response times. Right now, if the HVAC fails in Building C, we have a contractor on site in under 2 hours. Guaranteed. That's in the contract. What's the response time in the new proposal? Derek glanced at Amanda. She shrugged. It's standard, Derek said. 24 to 48 hours. So if the AC fails on a Friday afternoon in July, we're without cooling until Monday. We'd have priority service. Priority means they bump other clients. What happens when everyone's calling for priority because it's a heat wave? We'd negotiate better terms. Derek, I kept my voice level. You're changing a system that works because you think you can do it cheaper, but cheaper doesn't mean better. It means faster failure and higher risk. His face flushed. I appreciate your experience, but this is exactly the kind of old-school thinking that holds companies back. The business environment has changed. We need to be agile, efficient, innovative. Buzzwords. He was hiding behind buzzwords because he didn't have an actual argument. Fine, I said. He blinked. Fine? You're the director of operations. You want to consolidate vendors, that's your call. Amanda smirked. Wow, That was easier than expected. I ignored her. Looked at Derek. You'll need to document the proposed changes and submit them for consultation review, per Section 3.4 of the transfer agreement. His expression went blank. What? The agreement you had me sign. Operational changes require documented consultation during the transition period. You submit the proposal, I review it, provide my input. If I don't object, you proceed. If I do object, it goes to board review. I don't remember that clause. It's in the document. Subsection 3.4. Should still be in your email. Derek pulled out his phone, started scrolling. His confidence was evaporating in real time, replaced by something that looked a lot like panic. This is just a formality, right? He said. You're not actually going to block this. I'm not blocking anything. I'm following the process you established. I didn't establish. He stopped himself. Took a breath. Okay, fine. I'll send you the formal documentation. You'll review it. How long do you need? The agreement specifies 5 business days for consultation review. 5 days? That's what you signed. Amanda leaned in. This is ridiculous. You're sabotaging him. I'm following company policy. The policy Derek created when he signed the transfer agreement. Derek's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, stood up abruptly. I have to take this. Dad, we'll continue this conversation later. He walked away with the phone to his ear, leaving me alone with Amanda. She stared at me with unconcealed hostility. You're not going to get away with this. Get away with what? Following procedure? You know exactly what you're doing. Playing games, trying to stay relevant. I'm trying to keep the company functional. You're trying to protect your ego. Derek's moving forward whether you like it or not. You can either help or get out of the way. I took a sip of water. Didn't respond. She leaned closer, lowered her voice. You think you're clever, but you're just a relic. Derek's going to build something better than anything you ever did. And when he does, no one's going to remember you were even here. I set down my glass, looked her in the eye. Derek called the HVAC vendor last week, I said quietly. Asked about modifying the service agreement. Know what they told him? She didn't answer. They told him any contract modifications needed approval from the facilities director. That's me. Because I'm still listed as the primary contact on every vendor agreement in the system. Derek can be director of operations all he wants. But until someone updates those contracts, which requires documented consultation, I'm still the one the vendors call when there's a problem. Her face went pale. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. Derek will submit his proposal. I'll review it. I'll probably object because it's a bad idea based on incomplete analysis. It'll go to the board. The board will ask questions Derek can't answer. And then he'll have to decide whether he wants to keep pushing or actually learn how things work. You're bluffing. Test me. Derek came back to the table. We need to go. Something came up. Amanda stood immediately, grabbing her purse. Derek threw cash on the table without waiting for the bill. I'll send you that documentation, he said to me. I'll be waiting. They left. I sat there for another few minutes, finished my water, left a tip for the server who'd barely had a chance to take our order. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright and hot. Summer coming early. The kind of weather that stresses HVAC systems and makes people wish they'd maintained their equipment properly. The kind of weather that reveals weaknesses. I drove back to the office and checked my email. Derek had already sent the formal proposal, a hastily written document that basically repeated his email from this morning, formatted to look official. I opened the vendor contracts, started making notes. The thing about systems is that they're interconnected. Change one part, you affect everything else. Derek thought he was just consolidating vendors. What he was actually doing was removing redundancy, eliminating backup options, and creating single points of failure. In engineering, single points of failure are how disasters start. I spent 3 hours documenting the problems with his proposal, every assumption that didn't hold, every risk he hadn't considered, every scenario where his efficiency would turn into crisis. Then I saved the document and didn't send it. Let him wait, let him wonder, let him feel what it's like when someone else controls the timeline. That evening, Evelyn asked how lunch went. About like we expected. He's not backing down? He can't. He's committed. Announced the consolidation to the whole company. If he backs down now, he looks weak. And if he pushes forward? Then he'll learn an expensive lesson. She was quiet for a moment, washing dishes while I dried. Routine, comfortable. You're enjoying this, she said. A little. That worries me. I set down the dish towel. Why? Because Derek's still your son, and Amanda. She's vindictive. This won't end with just business embarrassment. What do you think she'll do? Evelyn turned off the water, dried her hands. I don't know, but I know her type. She married Derek for the position, not the person. If he starts looking like a liability, she'll protect herself first. You think she'll leave him? I think she'll do whatever benefits her most. And right now, you're in her way. I thought about Amanda's expression at lunch, the cold calculation behind her eyes. Let her try, I said. The next day, Derek called an emergency operations meeting. I wasn't invited. Found out from Marcus, the security guard, who mentioned seeing the conference room booked for senior leadership only. I checked the calendar. Sure enough, Derek had scheduled 2 hours with the department heads, shutting me out, making decisions without my input, testing the boundaries. I went about my normal routine, checked the maintenance reports, approved a $3,000 electrical repair, returned calls from vendors who still had my number as the primary contact. At 11:30, my phone rang. Tom Hendricks from the HVAC company. Hey, got a weird call yesterday, he said. Some guy claiming to be the new operations director, asking about our capacity to handle additional buildings. Derek Blake, my son? Yeah, that's the name. He wanted to know if we could take on full service contracts for 8 more properties. I told him we're at capacity already with your current agreement. What did he say? Got kind of pissy. Said we should make room for a valued client. I told him we value the relationship we have, which is why we're not overextending. Didn't love that answer. Thanks for the heads up. No problem. He called back an hour later, asked about breaking the current contract early. I sent him to legal. They're going to tell him the same thing I did. We have an agreement through March next year. Early termination costs 20% of remaining contract value. I did the math. About $40,000. Give or take? Your kid trying to blow up a good thing? He's trying to innovate. Tom laughed. Innovation. That what they call it now? After we hung up, I pulled up the vendor contract database. Derek had called 4 other companies, 2 electrical contractors, 2 plumbing services, all trying to break existing agreements to make room for his consolidation plan. All of them had early termination penalties. He was looking at over $200,000 in breakage costs just to get out of current contracts. Add in the transition costs, the risk premium from new vendors taking on an unfamiliar building portfolio, the inevitable service disruptions during changeover. His savings were going to cost more than they saved. I should tell him. That's what a father does. Warns his son before he steps off a cliff. But I'd already warned him at lunch. He'd ignored it. Called it old school thinking, so I documented everything. The calls from vendors, the contract breakage costs, the transition risks, put it all in a memo and saved it to my personal drive. Evidence, not for a lawsuit, for the board meeting where Derek would have to explain why his innovation initiative had blown up the operational budget. At 2 p.m., Derek sent out another email, this one to the facilities team. Effective immediately, all vendor communications should be directed through my office. We're streamlining the approval process to eliminate redundancy and improve response times. Eliminate redundancy. He really loved that phrase. Didn't understand that redundancy was the whole point. Backups, options, safety nets. My phone started buzzing. Text messages from the facilities team. Is this real? Do we actually report to him now? What should we do? I replied to each one. Follow the chain of command. If he's giving orders, follow them. Document everything. Because that's what you do when you want to prove someone's incompetent. You let them give orders, follow the orders exactly as given, and document the inevitable failure. It's not sabotage if you're doing what you're told. By end of day Wednesday, Derek had managed to alienate 4 long-term vendors, create confusion in the facilities team, ignore 2 urgent maintenance requests because they were routed through the wrong channels, send 3 emails with contradictory instructions, and he still hadn't submitted proper documentation for consultation review. I sent him a reminder email, professional, courteous, just noting that I hadn't received the required documentation per section 3.4 of the transfer agreement. He replied, working on it. Busy week. Too busy to follow the procedures he'd signed off on. Thursday morning, the AC failed in Building C. It was 87 degrees outside, climbing toward 95. The building had 200 people working across 4 floors. The HVAC system was 16 years old and had been running fine with regular maintenance. Had been. The facilities supervisor called me at 9:15. The AC's down. Called our contractor, but Derek's office said we need to route requests through him now. Did you? Yeah. Left 2 messages. No response. How long's it been down? Since about 7 this morning. The night cleaning crew reported the system was making weird noises. I was going to call it in, but wanted to wait for normal business hours. Classic mistake. HVAC problems don't wait for business hours. Call the contractor directly, I said. Override the routing protocol. This is an emergency. Derek's email said, I know what it said. Call them anyway. I'll handle Derek. I hung up and called Derek's direct line. Voicemail. Called his cell. Voicemail. Sent a text. AC failure building C. Need immediate contractor response. People are working in 85-degree heat. No reply. Called Evelyn at her office. Derek's ignoring an emergency, I said. Intentionally? Don't know. Either way, we've got 200 people sitting in a building that's getting hotter by the minute. What are you going to do? Fix it, I called Tom Hendricks directly. Tom, Building C, AC failure. Can you get someone out there? Your son called yesterday, told me not to accept direct requests from facilities anymore. Said everything goes through him. This is an emergency. People are going to start leaving if it's not fixed in the next hour. I believe you, but Derek was pretty clear about the new protocol. Tom, I kept my voice level. I've worked with you for 12 years. I'm asking you directly. Can you help? A long pause. I can have a guy there in 45 minutes, but Derek's not going to be happy. Send me the bill directly. I'll handle Derek. The technician showed up at 10:15. Found the problem, a blown compressor motor. The kind of thing that happens when routine maintenance gets delayed. The kind of thing that could have been caught if someone had been paying attention. The kind of thing that costs $8,000 to fix on an emergency call. Derek finally returned my call at 11:30. What's this about the AC? It failed. Tom's crew is there now. I thought I was clear about routing protocols. You were. I ignored them. 200 people were working in dangerous heat conditions. I made a call. You undermined my authority. I prevented a crisis. By going behind my back. By using the contacts I've maintained for over a decade while you weren't answering your phone. Silence. Then, we need to talk about boundaries. We need to talk about your consultation documentation. Still waiting. He hung up. I sat at my desk and waited for what came next. It came at 2:00 p.m., an email from Derek, CC'd to HR. Effective immediately, Robert Blake's operational access is being reviewed pending consultation with legal regarding role boundaries and protocol compliance. All vendor relationships are to be transferred to my oversight. This includes direct contact, contract negotiations, and emergency response coordination. Translation. He was trying to cut me off from the vendor network. I forwarded the email to my personal account, then called the facilities team. Got Derek's email? I asked Tom Chen, the facilities supervisor. Yeah. What does it mean? It means Derek's trying to centralize control. It also means he doesn't understand that vendor relationships are built on trust, not org charts. So what do we do? Keep doing your jobs. If Derek gives you an order, follow it. If there's an emergency and Derek's unavailable, use your judgment. Document everything. You think this is going somewhere? I know it is. That evening, Amanda called my cell phone. First time she'd ever called me directly. We need to talk, she said. I'm listening. Not on the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Coffee? Why? Because this situation is getting out of hand and someone needs to be the adult. What situation? Derek's stress level. Your resistance to the transition, the tension it's creating. We need to find a resolution. I thought about Evelyn's warning. Amanda protecting her interests. Where? I asked. That place on 5th Street, 9 a.m. She hung up before I could respond. I told Evelyn about the call. Don't go, she said immediately. Why not? Because she's setting you up for something. This isn't about resolution. It's about getting you to say something she can use against you. Maybe she genuinely wants to fix things. Evelyn gave me a look that said I was being naive. Or maybe, I said, she's going to make threats, and I want to hear them. Why? Because threats are admissions. If she threatens me, she's admitting Derek's in trouble. And if Derek's in trouble, that consultation requirement becomes a lot more valuable. Evelyn shook her head. You're playing a dangerous game. Derek started it. I'm just playing by the rules he established. I met Amanda at 9 the next morning. She was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees. Bought mine without asking how I took it. Got it wrong. Too much cream, not enough sugar. Thanks for coming, she said. Wednesday morning came with the kind of cold clarity that makes you see things you'd been avoiding. I knew what the meeting would be before I walked in. Derek wasn't interested in compromise. He was interested in removal. I dressed carefully. Not the old suit from the board meeting, something newer. Professional without trying too hard. The kind of outfit that says you respect the process even if you don't respect what's happening. Evelyn watched me from the bedroom doorway. "You could call in sick," she said. "That would just delay it. Give you time to prepare." I've been preparing for 3 weeks, since the moment Derek handed me that document to sign. She came over, straightened my tie even though it was already straight. Old gesture, comfort ritual. "What are you going to do?" "Listen, document, respond appropriately." "That's your professional answer. What's your real answer?" I looked at her. 28 years of marriage. She could read me better than I could read myself. "I'm going to let Derek make his case. Then I'm going to show him what control actually looks like." That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. She didn't argue, just kissed me and said, "Don't burn bridges you might need later." I arrived at the office at 9:30. The HR conference room was on the 3rd floor, neutral territory, away from both Derek's office and mine. Linda Park was already there, setting up. Derek sat at one end of the table, Amanda beside him, even though she had no official role in the company. I should have objected. Didn't. Wanted to see how far they'd push. Linda cleared her throat. "Robert, thank you for coming. This meeting is to address concerns that have been raised regarding your conduct and role boundaries during the operational transition." "What specific concerns?" Derek pulled out a folder. Professional, prepared. He'd been working on this. "Over the past 3 weeks, you've repeatedly violated the established chain of command, contacted vendors directly against explicit instructions, undermined operational decisions, created confusion among staff about reporting structure." He slid the folder across the table. Inside were printed emails, incident reports, statements from vendors. I scanned them. Most were accurate. I had contacted vendors directly, had responded to emergencies without routing through Derek's office, had maintained relationships Derek wanted severed. "These look like standard operational procedures," I said, "maintaining vendor relationships, responding to emergencies, ensuring continuity of service. After you were explicitly told to route all communications through my office. After you established a routing system that created dangerous delays in emergency response." "That's your opinion." "It's documented fact. Building C, 91 degrees for 6 hours because your office didn't respond. Building E, electrical hazard that took 8 hours to address because the routing protocol delayed the service call." Amanda leaned forward. "You're cherry-picking incidents to justify insubordination." I looked at Linda. "Is she part of this meeting?" Linda shifted uncomfortably. "Amanda's here as an observer." "In what capacity?" "As someone who's witnessed the operational tensions firsthand. She's not employed by the company. She has no standing to participate in a personnel review." Derek's face flushed. "She's here because I asked her to be. She's provided valuable perspective on the organizational dynamics. She's here because you wanted backup. This is a personnel matter. She shouldn't be in the room." Linda looked between us, hesitated. "Amanda, perhaps it would be better if you waited outside." "That's ridiculous." "Amanda." Derek's voice was tight. "It's fine. Wait in my office." She stood abruptly, grabbed her purse, shot me a look that promised retribution, left without another word. When the door closed, Linda took a breath. "Let's refocus. Derek, please continue." Derek collected himself, went through his list, each incident where I'd acted independently, each time I'd contradicted his decisions or maintained old protocols. He'd been thorough. I had to give him that. "The pattern is clear," he concluded. "Robert isn't accepting the transition. He's actively working against it, creating operational confusion, damaging vendor relationships, undermining my authority." "I'm following the consultation requirements you established," I said. "You're abusing them, using procedural technicalities to block necessary changes." "I'm using the exact procedures you signed off on. If you don't like them, you should have read the document more carefully before signing." His jaw tightened. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. The adversarial attitude, the constant resistance." Linda raised a hand. "Let me ask you both something. Is there a path forward here? A way to make this transition work?" Derek didn't hesitate. "Yes. Robert needs to either accept his advisory role and stop interfering with operational decisions, or we need to discuss separation terms." "Separation," I said. "You mean termination." "I mean acknowledging that this arrangement isn't working and finding a mutually acceptable resolution. After 23 years, you want me gone because I won't rubber stamp your mistakes. I want you gone because you can't let go of control." Linda looked at me. "Robert, your perspective?" "I'd accept separation," I said. Under the right terms. Derek blinked. He'd been expecting a fight. What terms? Linda asked. Full severance package, 6 months' salary, continued healthcare coverage, and a formal acknowledgement that the separation is due to restructuring, not performance issues. That's generous, Derek said, given your conduct. That's standard for someone with my tenure and position, unless you want to claim termination for cause, which would require proving misconduct. Good luck with that. Linda was taking notes. I'll need to review this with legal and the CFO, but in principle, those terms sound reasonable for a restructuring separation. How long? Derek asked. To review? End of week? And in the meantime, Robert continues his current duties. No changes to access or responsibilities until we have a formal agreement. Derek looked like he wanted to argue. Thought better of it. Fine. End of week. The meeting adjourned. I went back to my office and sat down at my desk, feeling the weight of what had just happened. 23 years ended in a 30-minute meeting, except it wasn't ended. Not yet. I pulled up the transfer agreement on my screen. Read through section 3.4 again. The consultation requirements didn't expire until the 90-day transition period ended. That was 74 days from now. Severance negotiations could take weeks, maybe a month, maybe longer if I pushed back on terms. Which meant Derek was going to be stuck with the consultation requirements for at least another month, possibly longer. And if I was leaving anyway, I had nothing to lose by using them. I drafted an email to Derek. Subject line, consultation required, multiple pending operational changes. Listed every change he'd made or proposed in the last 3 weeks that met the threshold for consultation review. Vendor contacts, access protocols, maintenance scheduling modifications, emergency response procedures. 12 items total, each one requiring documented consultation, each one potentially subject to board review if I objected. Sent it at 3:47 p.m. Derek called me 4 minutes later. What the hell is this? Required consultation per section 3.4. You've made multiple operational changes without following proper procedure. I'm formally requesting review. You just agreed to separation terms, which haven't been finalized. Until they are, the transfer agreement is still active, which means consultation requirements are still in effect. This is petty. This is procedural compliance. You're big on procedures, remember? I could fire you right now. For cause. Insubordination. You could try. I'd fight it. During the fight, all these consultation requirements would remain in effect. Could take months, maybe longer. Silence. He was doing the math, realizing the trap he'd walked into. What do you want? He asked finally. I want you to follow the procedures you established. Submit documentation for each of these changes. I'll review them. If they're sound, I'll approve. If not, I'll object and we'll let the board decide. And if I don't, then you're in violation of the transfer agreement, which would be grounds for me to request immediate board intervention on operational management. You're blackmailing me. I'm following policy, your policy. He hung up. I sat there feeling something that wasn't quite satisfaction, wasn't quite regret, just the cold certainty that I'd escalated a conflict past the point where easy solutions existed. Evelyn called 20 minutes later. Derek just called me. He's furious. I know. He said you're sabotaging the separation agreement. I'm ensuring he follows proper procedures. He said you're trying to destroy him. I closed my eyes. That's not what I'm doing. Then what are you doing? I'm making sure he understands that control isn't the same as authority, that you can't just push people out without consequences. At what cost? What do you mean? To your relationship, to our family. Derek's talking about cutting us off completely. No contact, no holidays, no grandkids when they come. The word landed like a punch. Grandkids. Future stakes I hadn't considered. He's bluffing. Is he? Because Amanda's encouraging it, telling him that we're toxic, that he needs to protect his future family from our influence. Amanda doesn't make decisions for Derek. Are you sure? Because from where I'm sitting, she's been making most of them for the last 3 years. I didn't have a response to that. Come home, Evelyn said. We need to talk about this. Really talk. Not strategy, not procedures. Just what we're doing to our family. I'll be there in an hour. I logged off my computer, locked my office, walked past Derek's office on the way out. The door was closed, but I could hear voices. Derek and Amanda arguing about something. Couldn't make out words, just tone. Sharp, accusatory. Marcus was at the security desk. Evening, Mr. Blake. You okay? Long day. Heard about the HR meeting. None of my business, but you know the staff's on your side, right? Derek's making changes nobody asked for, breaking things that worked. Appreciate that. Whatever happens, you should know. You built something here. People respect that. I thanked him and headed to my car. Sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes before starting the engine. Who built something. 23 years of building systems, relationships, knowledge. And now I was using that foundation to fight my own son. The drive home was quiet. Suburban streets giving way to the neighborhood, normal houses with normal lives, people coming home from work, cooking dinner, doing homework with their kids. Simple, uncomplicated. I'd had that once, when Derek was young, before business school and Amanda and ambition turned him into someone I didn't quite recognize. Evelyn was waiting in the kitchen, 2 glasses of wine already poured. "Sit," she said. I sat. "Tell me the truth, not the tactical version, the real version. What are you trying to accomplish?" I took a sip of wine. Let the question settle. "I'm trying to teach him a lesson." "About what?" "About respect, about understanding systems before you change them, about the difference between managing people and managing operations." "And it has to be this way? Public confrontation, board meetings, threatening his position." "He threatened mine first. He's your son." "Which is exactly why I can't just let him fail. If I back down now, he'll make mistakes that cost the company millions. He'll damage vendor relationships that took decades to build. He'll learn all the wrong lessons about how to lead. And if you keep pushing, you'll lose him completely." "Maybe, or maybe he'll realize I was right and thank me for it later." Evelyn set down her glass, looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Do you hear yourself? Thank me for it later." Like this is some tough love parenting exercise. Derek's not 12 anymore. He's a grown man with a career and a wife and a future, and you're treating him like a child who needs to learn respect. He's acting like a child who thinks he knows everything. So are you. That stopped me. She continued. "You're both so busy proving you're right that neither of you is asking if this fight is worth what it's costing. Derek's losing his mentor, you're losing your son. And for what? To prove who understands HVAC contracts better? It's not about HVAC contracts. Then what's it about?" I wanted to say it was about competence, about protecting the company, about making sure Derek learned how to actually run operations instead of just talking about it. But underneath all that was something simpler and uglier. Pride. Derek had dismissed me, called my work outdated, tried to push me aside like I was irrelevant, and I'd responded by showing him exactly how relevant I still was. "It's about him needing to understand what I built," I said finally. "What it takes to actually make things run. He thinks it's easy, that you can just hire cheaper vendors and streamline processes and everything works better. He doesn't get that systems are fragile, that they require constant attention and expertise and relationships that can't be replaced by competitive bidding. So teach him." "I'm trying." "No, you're punishing him. There's a difference." I didn't have an answer for that. We sat in silence for a while, the wine slowly disappearing from our glasses, the kitchen clock ticking away seconds that felt heavier than usual. Finally, Evelyn spoke again. "Linda Park called me today." I looked up. "Why?" "To give me a heads up, unofficial, friend to friend. She said the separation agreement is probably going through. Legal's reviewing the terms, should have something by Friday. And she said once you're gone, Derek's planning to restructure everything, complete overhaul, new vendors, new systems, new protocols. Everything you built, he's going to tear down and rebuild his way. He'll fail. Probably. And when he does, it won't be your problem anymore. You'll be separated, out of the company, no responsibility for the mess. You think I should just let it happen. I think you should decide what you're actually fighting for. If it's the company, then find a way to make Derek succeed, even if it means swallowing your pride. If it's about being right, then walk away and let him learn the hard way. But don't pretend you can do both." She stood up, started putting dishes in the dishwasher. Normal evening routine. "I'm going to bed early," she said. "You should think about what you really want, not what you think you deserve, what you actually want." She left me sitting there with half a glass of wine and questions I didn't want to answer. What did I want? I wanted Derek to respect what I'd built, to understand that experience mattered, to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, his father knew something worth listening to. I wanted the company to succeed, to avoid the disasters I could see coming but couldn't seem to make anyone else see. I wanted to be right, and I wanted my son back. But Evelyn was right about one thing. I couldn't have all of it. Something had to give. I finished my wine and went to my office. Pulled up the consultation request I'd sent Derek. All 12 items requiring review. Looked at them with fresh eyes. Half were legitimate concerns, things that actually mattered, changes that could cause real problems if implemented poorly. The other half were procedural technicalities, things I was flagging because I could, not because I should. I could withdraw the technicalities, keep the legitimate concerns, show Derek I was willing to meet halfway, or I could push forward with everything, use every tool the transfer agreement gave me, make Derek's life difficult until the separation was finalized, prove that I still had power even if I'd lost authority. I sat there for an hour, staring at the screen, thinking about choices and consequences. Finally, I drafted a revised email. Derek, after reviewing the consultation request, I'm withdrawing items 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. These are procedural rather than operational concerns. The remaining items still require consultation as they present genuine risk to service continuity. Happy to discuss specific mitigation strategies. Dad. I read it 3 times. Didn't send it. Because sending it meant admitting that Evelyn was right, that I'd been playing games, that maybe I cared more about proving a point than protecting the company, and I wasn't ready to admit that yet. I saved it as a draft and went to bed. Thursday morning, I woke up to 17 emails from Derek, all sent between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m., each one addressing a different item from my consultation request: documentation, analysis, mitigation strategies. He'd worked all night preparing responses. The documentation was good. Not perfect, but thorough. He'd actually thought through the risks, proposed reasonable alternatives, showed he'd learned from the board meeting feedback. The last email was different. Sent at 3:17 a.m., subject line, "Can we talk?" Dad, I know you're probably already planning your objections to all of this, but I put in the work, did the analysis, tried to address your concerns properly. I'm not asking you to rubber stamp anything. I'm asking you to actually review it and give me honest feedback. Not strategic, not political, just operational. That's all. D. I read it twice. Saw the opening Evelyn had been talking about. Could respond professionally. Acknowledge the effort. Find the compromise. Or I could keep pushing. Find flaws in his analysis. Force more revisions. Drag out the consultation process. I opened the draft email from last night, the one withdrawing half my requests. Added 1 line. Reviewed your overnight documentation. Well done. Let's discuss the remaining items in person. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office? Sent it before I could change my mind. Derek replied in 3 minutes. I'll be there. I called Evelyn. I sent him an olive branch. What kind? The kind where I acknowledge he did good work and suggest we actually talk instead of fighting through email. That's progress. We'll see. Meeting tomorrow. Could go either way. Do me a favor? Remember he's your son before he's your opponent. I'll try. Friday morning, Derek showed up at my office at 8:55. Early, nervous energy. I'd made coffee. Real coffee, not the office stuff. Poured 2 cups the way we both liked it. He sat down, didn't quite meet my eyes. Thanks for agreeing to meet, he said. Thanks for doing the work properly. We sat there for a moment. Awkward. 23 years of being father and son, 3 weeks of being adversaries, now trying to figure out how to be colleagues. Your analysis on the electrical contracts was solid, I said. You found a middle option I hadn't considered. The hybrid model? Yeah. Keeps critical systems with the premium vendor, moves non-critical to cheaper service. That actually works. He relaxed slightly. You think so? I do. Still some risks in the transition, but manageable if we phase it properly. What about the HVAC consolidation? I pulled up his documentation, showed him the sections that worked and the ones that didn't. The response time guarantees you negotiated are better, but this force majeure clause is still too broad, and the maintenance schedule assumes ideal conditions. We need padding for unexpected failures. He nodded, taking notes, actually listening. We went through each item, found middle ground on most of them. A few required more work, but nothing insurmountable. After an hour, Derek sat back. This is how it should have been from the start, he said, actually working together instead of fighting. Yeah. So why wasn't it? I thought about how to answer that. The truth was complicated. Pride and power and everything Evelyn had said. Because I felt like you were trying to erase what I'd built, I said finally. And I responded by trying to prove you couldn't function without me, which wasn't fair. He was quiet for a moment. I wasn't trying to erase anything. I was trying to prove I could do it myself, that I wasn't just riding on your reputation. I know. But the way I did it, Amanda kept saying I needed to establish authority, make it clear I was in charge. I listened to her instead of listening to you. Amanda doesn't understand operations. No, but she understands office politics. And she convinced me this was about politics instead of operations. Is it? I don't know anymore. Maybe both. We sat there with our coffee getting cold. Two people who'd spent 3 weeks fighting instead of talking. The separation agreement, I said. You really want me gone? Derek looked uncomfortable. I want the fighting to stop. If that means separation, then yeah. But if we can actually work together like this... He gestured at the notes we'd made. Maybe there's another option. Like what? Like you stay on. Advisory role, like the transfer agreement said. But actually advisory, not adversarial. I make decisions, you provide input. When you object to something, we talk it through like this instead of escalating to the board. And if we can't agree, then I'm the director. I make the final call, but at least I'll have heard your perspective first. It was reasonable, mature even. The kind of compromise that could actually work if both of us committed to it. I'd need that in writing, I said. Clear boundaries, clear process for escalation, clear definition of when consultation is required versus when it's just courtesy. I can work with legal on that. And Amanda stays out of operational decisions. His face tightened. That's not fair. She's been pushing you toward confrontation instead of collaboration. If we're going to make this work, we need to keep the relationship professional. She's my wife, which is fine, but she doesn't work for the company. She shouldn't be in personnel meetings or strategy sessions or anywhere else where she's influencing decisions she doesn't have expertise to make. Derek wanted to argue. I could see it in his expression, but he also knew I was right. I'll talk to her, he said finally. Good. We finished our coffee, made plans to draft a revised agreement, set up weekly check-ins to review operational issues before they became conflicts. It felt fragile, like we were building something that could collapse if either of us pushed too hard, but it was better than warfare. Derek stood to leave, paused at the door. For what it's worth, he said, I'm sorry. For the way I handled all this, for listening to Amanda instead of you, for making this personal when it should have been professional. I'm sorry, too, for letting my pride get in the way of actually helping you. He nodded, left. I sat there feeling like maybe, possibly, we'd found a way forward. Then my phone rang. Amanda. We need to talk, she said. Here we go.